everybody. Welcome back to We Are Live. We're live in St. Louis at Midcoast Studio in Grand Center. Travis Terrell's in New York. Chris Gardner's here, and we're joined by Robert Cohen, photojournalist for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Great to see you, sir. It's been a pleasure watching your work through the years, and very excited to have you in here. We have somebody with high regard, Travis. He's got serious credentials. I don't know if you know a friend of ours by the name of Pulitzer. He's also a friend of Robert's. So Robert's from the Post-Dispatch. Great to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're looking through some of your work here, just jumping right into the iconic work that you've done. Ferguson has been covered, weather throughout the Midwest. I can't imagine some of the moments not being as big as they were without your photos. So congrats to you and great work. I just wanted to get that out of the way right off the bat.
Thank you. I mean, our staff, our newsroom was, this was our story. This is our local story, and you know, it garnered national, worldwide attention, but it was, you know, it was the best of community journalism.
Absolutely. Travis Terrell joining in Brooklyn. Travis, I know you've seen some of the iconic photos that Mr. Cohen has provided. Wanted to toss it over to you to really get a feel for the one photo that's a huge iconic moment from the Ferguson, issues that we had here in St. Louis, and it's the gentleman in the American flag T-shirt and a bag of red hot riplets in his hand, throwing what was, was that a smoke bomb, I guess, from the police, or what would you call the?
It was a tear gas canister.
Tear gas canister.
Yeah.
Travis, I wanted to toss it to you, sir.
Robert, what are some of your objectives when you go out to cover a story as a photojournalist? I mean, something like we see here during the Ferguson protests, you just never know how those moments will come about. So I've always wondered, how do photojournalists prepare themselves when they go to cover something like that that's so fluid and so volatile?
Yeah, you know, this is not it's not a common thing for me to cover, as well as our staff. It's not every day we have unrest in St. Louis, and so it's a different animal for some of us. There are a couple people on staff that have been to, you know, active war zones. They've been embedded with the military. They have, you know, a little bit of training with, you know, wearing protective gear. I'm not one of those people, but so, you know, when we were out on a situation like that, I mean, you prepare. You know, A, you want to be safe. B, you want to tell the most accurate, most truthful story you can. And 3, you want to hit deadline. You don't want to miss deadline. And so it's a very fluid situation where you're watching. You know, sometimes you're watching your back. A lot of times you're watching your watch, because you kind of know that the paper needs to be fed, social media needs to be fed, and yeah, you come out of a story like that goes on for weeks and months, and what you really want is some sleep in the end.
You are human
Yeah.
when it comes down to it. I'm curious, in that situation, just sticking with the Ferguson coverage, in that situation, your job as a photojournalist, are you literally there to point and click, or are you expected to be tweeting live, getting photos up through that way, or are you literally just doing it to load up, to get those photos and moments over to be, whether it's on stltoday.com or printed in the actual paper? What is your actual assignment while running around, and again, in a situation that none of you are familiar with?
Right. So I mean, our primary objective is to tell the story as accurately as we can, and use the tools we have to get those images and that story to as many people as possible. So, you know, different members of our staff are better with technology than I am, and so David Carson, for instance, one of my colleagues, he would do a lot more of live tweeting. At that time, they were doing Vine video. And so he would do a lot more live on the scene. In my case, I would generally, gather images, and when there was I want to say a break in the action. That's not the right word, but when things quieted down a little bit, and I'm watching my watch, then it's time to send pictures. And as I send pictures, I'm also tweeting pictures. And my objective through social media is to get people to our site and to look at what we have to offer, especially on this story, because
meant a lot to a lot of people.
It did, and so it's our job, it's our duty to bring as much as we can to the table.
Completely makes sense.
Robert, I find it that your job is to just take the pictures, but I'm curious because we see it in today's landscape. People always have comments and always have something to say about coverage. How often do you hear it? And you don't even use words. Just how often do you hear feedback from the readership of work, and do they often critique you almost in the same manner as written journalists?
I don't think we necessarily get as much email as written journalists, but
Okay.
I certainly get a lot of comments through my Twitter feed when I put stuff up, and I get some email. I don't spend a whole lot of time on Facebook, so I know there's stuff going down on Facebook, but that's not where I spend my time. I mean,
A smart man.
I mean, they tell us, they tell us as journalists, some of the worst things to do is to read the comments, and I don't spend a whole lot of time there, but I am slightly addicted to Twitter, so I
You and Travis could do a show together.
Yeah,
You guys could just talk about how important Twitter is to your life.
yeah. So I think if somebody takes a shot at me on Twitter and I can refute it, I'm going to refute it. And
Look at Robert.
and
Nice.
I'm also going to defend the newspaper also. So when we don't always get everything right, but we sure try hard as hell to get it right.
I love that, and we have a good relationship with several of the sports writers, Derek Gould, Ben Frederickson, Ben Hockman. So there's a healthy amount of, we're an entertainment show. We have a lot of comics on. We host a roast show even. Travis made one of your bosses really happy one time, making. So this is just playing to it. Travis, this is a great story, and you know it is. Very obviously being silly, mocking our friend Ben Frederickson, who we also call a hillbilly, and many different horrible things that he deserves on most occasions. Travis tweeted something about, okay, slideshow journalist. And before Ben could even respond, who was the responder?
Oh, it's Roger.
Roger
Yeah.
Hensley.
He was sticking up for
I
Ben
want
Fred.
this.
Yeah.
Travis is my guy. Travis ain't stepping up for me like this. Roger Henley shoots in to save the day to tell Travis to stand down without realizing it was a joke between the two. But it just showed, like, hey, you've got your guard up. Don't mess with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Travis, would you like to apologize again directly to the paper?
I like to apologize to absolutely no one.
Oh, come on! Perfect.
Well, Ben Fred will tell you, each one of those slides is a click. So
It is a clip.
Play the game, man.
That's
we all
right.
know how this works.
Play the game. If you just
Robert, I am curious though. What was the photo that put it on your heart to pursue photojournalism? What was it for you that said, I wanted to get behind the lens? Is there a particular picture or a moment that you can recall early on in your career, or before you even started your career, where you realized, okay, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, for me, it's always been about meeting people and telling their stories. I mean, you get in. I meet people I don't know every single day, and they open their doors. They're willing to share their story, and I think that's just valuable to everybody. And I certainly saw that in my early days of college and working for the school newspaper, and that was a big thing. That's what gets me hooked, at least, is just helping to tell these stories.
Yeah, because Robert, like on a daily basis, like Ferguson is going to be a big topic, especially with a anniversary coming up, and everything that you guys have done. The Post-Dispatch wins a Pulitzer Prize for breaking news and photography for that. Also want to mention, if you want to see some of those photos and others, there's a big exhibit coming to town this weekend. It's opening up at the Missouri History Museum. It's brought to you by Newseum, I believe, where it's Pulitzer Prize winning photography. So I want to make sure we mention that That's coming to town. You can see some of these photos and a lot of others as well. But on a daily basis, I mean, this was a big story. This was a big national story, so there's a lot of focus there. But you're a community photographer. You're around telling. It's not one. You're not sent to a sporting event every day necessarily, or this every day necessarily. It's whatever there might be.
Yeah.
So how does that go for you, like preparing for any particular day? Because and you talked about meeting people. There's one photo from last year that stuck out to me that I thought was that you took that was my favorite photo from last year, and it's this one right here. It's bathrobe snow shovel guy. Was this in Webster? Is that where it was?
Yeah, this is like a mile from my house, and so I don't look at many stories with like I don't come into a whole lot of stories with like preconceptions and things like that. I try to be as objective as possible, but quite honestly, I cannot stand snow. I cannot stand being cold, and so
Amen.
most
Amen.
Where did you grow up?
New Orleans. Yeah, I grew up in New Orleans.
We get to the root of that.
Yeah.
We are what we, he is who he is. I get it.
Yeah, I remember 1972. We had my parents were in the Bahamas, and we were left at home, and it snowed, and we told them it snowed, and they said, no, it didn't. And
Huge. Go borrow some whiskey from the neighbors. This is the 70s. We don't care.
It was huge news down there. So anyhow, what I'm getting to is I'm not the guy who's going to be shooting pictures of kids sledding in Art Hill.
I'll find joy in other places.
It's not going to be when snow. So I'm leaving the house and just, I'm on the early shift and it's just, it's time to get a picture and get it in because it was a pretty, 4 or 5 inches overnight. And so it was something. And I'm coming down the hill and I'm seeing this guy and he sees me and I pull over and whenever possible, I'm always going to ask permission to photograph people. Now, during breaking news events, we're not chatting all that much sometimes, but something like this, it's his moment, and he comes out in his bathrobe and he's shoveling, and I got to at least ask him if it's okay to take his picture. And so I went over to him, introduced myself, said, hey, I just live up the road, which is right, less than a mile away, and it's okay if I take a picture of you shoveling? And he kind of looks down at what he's wearing and looks at me, and he said, go for it.
That's hilarious.
And so literally, I mean, I was on duty maybe a half hour before I shot this, and he was fortunate enough. He said yes.
I look at a picture like this, and it to me, I try to think of a backstory, and it's a guy who wakes up that morning angry at the snow. Just because he just throws the robe on and that's it. I'm going out there and taking care of this.
You skipped an important step.
What's that?
He was prompted by someone in his bed with him. This isn't self-motivated. This is a wife saying, "Get your ass outside right now."
I'm not getting dressed though.
Exactly. I don't give a damn. Just get it.
I was
just
going to
get it
relax
shoveled.
today.
That's right. Yeah.
I just see that on the face and in the outfit, and that's the backstory that hits.
No,
me.
I appreciate that. Quick, kind of random question as I just took a photo of you in the studio. Is the iPhone and other modern phones with the camera technology good or bad to you as a professional photojournalist? Do you appreciate that everyone can take high quality photos like this, or does it you kind of look down at that and say, it's still a giant difference between what I do and what people can do with their phones?
Well, everybody's a photographer now. So
that's the problem.
Yeah.
Slash good. I think it's good too.
Yeah.
It's good for oversight because all of a sudden you decide to do something nasty on the side of a public street, there could be repercussions because somebody just whip out their phone.
Absolutely. I mean, for phones, for video, for photos or for video, super valuable. Absolutely. I mean, it helps the journalism also. But I occasionally will take a picture with an iPhone. I'll sometimes do a the panorama feature, and we've published some of that stuff in the past, but I don't pay that close attention to it.
Right.
It's there. I don't. My phone does not have a super high resolution lens, and so.
What do you typically shoot with for the Post-Dispatch? Like some of the photos that you've taken this and were not necessarily filmed. I do like hearing this though. But what kind of camera lens, all that?
Yeah, we use Canon gear at the office, and so. All of our Canon equipment, it's supplied by the newspaper, And then we have like a closet which has our what we call our pool lenses, and those are our big lenses we use for baseball, for hockey, and highly expensive lenses, so we don't have like one for everybody. So we all share those. And but yeah, my typical day, I'm carrying around 2 camera bodies and a lens on each, and that's about it.
That's
So,
really cool.
yeah, just gotta be mobile.
Robert, is there a particular photo that you've taken that still sits with you? I know a lot of print journalists, they talk about the stories that they cover. There's always that one story that they still remember that for whatever reason stays with them. Is there a particular photo that you've taken that still, kind of gets to you personally or on an emotional level, a little bit more of a personal level?
Yeah, there's probably several. Ferguson stuff was definitely a story that will stay with me forever. We did some work several years ago about questionable deaths in nursing homes, and as part of that story, I did a sidebar piece on a family coping with having to make a decision to put a loved one in a nursing home, and watched. She had Alzheimer's disease, and she also had Parkinson's, and kind of watched that process as her husband cared for her at home in bed, and eventually had to make the decision to put her into a nursing home. And so those kind of things stick with me. A few years back, I did a story about suburban homelessness, and it was a story about families in St. Charles County living in motels. And it was a little surprising for people because you don't really think of St. Charles County having a whole lot of homeless folks there, and there are hundreds. And
Wow.
and so those,
Do you connect with people like that? I mean, just,
Yeah.
and not to call you a mercenary or anything,
Yeah.
but you would think, I think some of us, maybe including me, think you're out there taking pictures, and you're maybe like, hey, is it cool if I take a picture? You personally connect with your subject.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, stories like that, stories like, basically asking people to open their lives and let me watch them live in a motel when they have nowhere else to go. Yeah, that takes a lot of legwork, and it takes a lot of being around. It takes
Right.
a lot of you gain that trust when you just kind of keep showing up.
In the age of objectivity, how much sympathy are you allowed, if you will, to offer? I would imagine that there may be some form of restriction, so to speak, maybe at the Post, as far as how one can get so deep or connected to a story. Do you have your own personal motto in your head when you go cover a story about how connected you're going to be to the subject?
I think, you have to keep some distance, and in a story like homelessness, I'm not at liberty to help people at all. I'm just there to tell their story. But at the same time, you get to know people, and that kind of sticks with you. So yeah, you're there to be as objective and as fair to the story as you can, and if there's another side of the story, it's your duty to find that. If somebody is homeless for a variety of reasons, it's important to me to try to find those variety of reasons. Could alcohol be involved? Could drugs be involved? Is it just simply a lot of bad luck? It's important to show all of that as much as you can, be as complete.
Very interesting. Do you have a particular reporter or, I guess, teammate at this Post-Dispatch that you work with, or is it like that? Is it just kind of you shoot, it goes wherever? Do you like teaming up with certain writers or reporters for the paper?
Yeah, it depends on the story. Sometimes we work, I'd say most of the time we work independently.
Yeah.
Reporter will have a story, or I'll have a story that I want to bring a reporter into, and we talk, and we try to figure out kind of the best situations we can do, and we go out and cover it. Sometimes we're together, sometimes we're not. A decent example is last year and part of this year, we took a really deep dive into vacant buildings in St. Louis and what's going on, what's not going on. And so, part of that story was hopping in and trying to find people that were actually living in vacant buildings.
Did you find
And
it?
so, yeah, we found quite a few.
Yeah.
And so, on a story like that, there is that safety factor, because you're going into buildings where they're falling apart, brick by brick,
Yeah.
and also you're not exactly sure who you're running into in terms of people. So Jesse Bogan and I, Jesse, one of our reporters, you know, we worked together on that story quite a bit. And together being like there at the same time, and just, you know, for the storytelling, but also for the safety factor.
Typically in an abandoned building, do you find, I lived downtown for a couple of years, and the Larry Rice Center was there, and it really changed my perspective on how we treat the homeless. The majority of folks I found to very obviously have mental illness. In these situations, are you typically running into somebody who's potentially schizophrenic, potentially severe bipolar? I mean, not that you're even qualified to diagnose that, but is there an obvious type of person or that's afflicted, or is it just people down on their luck and that's where they're at?
Yeah.
Who do you typically run into?
Most people we run into, especially on this story, had mental health issues.
Yeah.
Some substance abuse issues also, but
Could coincide as well.
yeah, and almost everybody had some mental health issues going on. I mean, if you look at some of these, if you look at some of these images and you look at some of these living situations, I mean,
Which is not logical.
who would choose to go into a building? I mean, these are buildings.
Scary.
These are buildings that you pass on the street that are absolutely crumbling brick by brick, and you just pass them on the street, and you just pass them. Maybe you'd look at them, maybe you'd say, "Oh, that's too bad," but you'd never think somebody lives inside of that.
Right. And
Yeah.
Travis, we've talked about this. We've all been guilty of as a teenager or even just as a person, you're like, well, if I was homeless, I'd go to this gym and take a shower there and I'd sleep there. It's like, well, you're thinking like somebody who would probably never be homeless also in many situations. So I think it's important for people like you to document this and maybe it pushes something along that eventually leads to some help for them. You know what I mean, Travis?
Yeah, I guess my follow-up question or my next question, I'm curious as far as what for photojournalists, what's considered the pinnacle as far as photos? What's the photo that every photojournalist can agree on is just considered like a work of art or something that is held in high regard?
Wow. Different photos speak to different photojournalists in different ways. We've got, some people might consider the Blues winning the Stanley Cup as being like the pinnacle that they've ever photographed just because it's never happened before. But I can't really point to any one particular picture, but different images just strike people different ways. And if you ask a group of photojournalists what's the most significant picture they've ever photographed, you're not going to find a whole lot of commonality there because they're different issues that strike people differently.
You mentioned the Stanley Cup there, and we have the picture up of Craig Berube, the Blues head coach, as he's in his hometown, bringing that back. What was that trip like? Because it's not a normal story for an NHL head coach with Berube. Were you with Jim Thomas with this?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, it was a great story and just kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, Jim was going, and at the last minute, we got approval to send a photographer, and so I went up there, and it was literally, you're going up, and all you know is you have the coach's stamp of approval that the coach said, yeah, you can hang out with me that day in Calahoo. And so we go up there blind, not really knowing anybody, any situations, and it was an amazing day with the coach because different people, different athletes, different coaches are going to be, some are going to be comfortable with the photojournalists hanging around and some are not. I spent 17 hours with Coach Berube, and he didn't say a word to me the entire time, and I didn't say a word to him the entire time. He just let me work. He just let me be there.
Now, be honest, you saw a bunch of his old fight clips on YouTube, and you didn't want to mess with him. My God, that's a rabbit hole that you're like, I think he'd still mess most people up, man.
I think he might,
Yeah.
but he was great, and it's like he just let us do our thing, and we were on the family farm until about midnight, and just watch the cup go place to place through town and in the little ice hockey rink, and it was amazing. It was amazing.
What was it like learning about his backstory, though? Because some of that in the town where he is, as JT told the story in the Post, and you provided the photography alongside it. it's something different
Yeah.
that I think that at least grabbed me, just because that's what something along those lines grabs me.
Yeah.
Is
Because of his
when
upbringing?
Yeah, just because it's
The
like
First Nation
okay,
inclusion
I don't
and-
know about this.
Even the
Educate me.
Did you,
Right.
Travis, speak up on this? And Gardner, I'm not trying to interrupt you here, but did you guys know the term First Nation?
I had heard it, but I didn't know
I didn't know what it
in
meant.
depth
didn't
what
either.
it was.
It's Native Americans, our version of Native in Canada.
Right.
They're referred to as First Nation.
So I just whenever something new is there, I'm that type of person that okay, I don't know anything about this. I'm ignorant.
Yeah.
I want to learn.
Right, and that's how I felt. As soon as I landed, I got in the night before he had the cup, and so I landed, and I literally because I landed in Edmonton and Callahoo's about 40 miles or so out, and I just hopped in the rental car and I drove to Callahoo because I wasn't doing the story till the next day, but I had to get the lay of the land and
Yeah.
I had to meet some people, and so went to the Callahoo General Store and just hung out with the guy there.
That's crazy.
And there was like next to nobody there. I mean, he may have had 2 or 3 customers come in the whole time I was there, and some of those were his cousins. And and it was great, just sitting back and tell me about this town. Tell me, what do you know about Coach? Tell me about this town. And it really helped for the next day because I just had my feet wet just a little bit.
Now from New Orleans, and you're learning about this, that town through the Stanley Cup. I'm sure you already knew about toasted raviolis and such when you got to photograph Pat Maroon at Charlie Gito's downtown.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. I photographed him earlier at All American Skate Rink, I believe it's called, down off Lindbergh, and that was his only public event that day. And so we were just going to cover that one little thing, and I talked to the blues guy right before this ended, and the blues guy said, Pat said it'd be all right if you come to the next event. And I said okay. I didn't have a whole lot of time because I had to go check out a double homicide scene.
Yeah.
And so I got that call while I was at the skate rink. And so I said, well, let me just drop in, and I dropped in, and there's so many people at Charlie Gito's. It was just packed. I could barely get in the door. And first thing he wanted to do was pack up the T-Ravs, and it was amazing. And so
How do we feel about the marinara on top, though? Are we okay with that?
I'm fine with it. But,
Okay, all right.
I don't,
I think there was poor planning on Charlie Gito's
Yeah.
part. They should have had a small ramekin that looked like a smaller version of the cup to the side. But I mean, hey, to
For
each their
dipping.
own.
I've heard
Yeah.
you're not the first person that said that.
Okay.
I've heard that.
All right.
Reader comments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait a second. You just compared me to Shirley in Wentzville? Damn it.
No, there were some issues with that, but
People get real serious about it, don't
yeah, but no joke. I mean, I shot that picture of the toasted ravioli. I was like, I think I'm done, and literally went straight to the double homicide.
How do you
after that.
transition
Oh,
that?
gosh.
Like, is it a tough transition, or is it?
You have an iron stomach.
Because I've asked this before to like some TV reporters that we've had, like Chris Davis, Alexis Zotos, because they could end up on a day where they're covering flooding, which you've covered flooding
Sure,
yourself.
sure.
This is a picture here in Clarksville, and you're covering Stinger's resignation. So you got flooding, Stinger resignation, Blues advancing through the playoffs all on the same day. Is that difficult mentally to kind of transition back and forth, or?
It's not usually the same day, but but yeah, I mean, every day really is different. Like I said, I meet different people every day, and so some stories are pretty heavy, and then you can balance it with some T-Ravs the next day or something. You never know, and so that's part of what I mean, I've been doing this for 33 years, and I think part of it is that variety, just kind of hooked on the variety.
Right. Oh, I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gardner, are there some photos we haven't got to yet?
Yeah.
I'd
Here's.
love to just get some brief commentary on each
I
one.
wanted to mention this one because we showed Bathrobe Snow Shovel Guy, and I gave you what I thought the backstory was. I love when I see a photo that makes me want to know more if I don't know what the story's about at all. And there's one you have that I had heard the story, but when you sent me the photo, I'm like, well, what's this one? and then I realized what the story was. But it grabbed me to want to know more initially, and it's this one right here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, what's this about? Because you see the broken mirror there with the face in it, and some tools and such, and some empty shelves. And I'm like, what's going on here? That's what I really love that in a photo, especially for a photojournalism photo. It makes me want to know more about the story. So if you could tell us a little bit about this story of this photo.
Yeah, so this is just a picture on the last day of work of Giovanni Locasio, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. But he runs, or for 50 years, he ran John's Shoe Repair down in Afton. And he was closing shop. I mean, the shoe repair business is, a dying art, and everybody buys the throwaway shoes. In fact, when I walked in with my Asics on, he said, "Yeah, even you." Okay. So he's hanging it up, and he just let us spend the last day with him, and he was finishing up a couple of repairs, and then the guys from We Buy Junk came in, and they took all of his equipment, all of his, all the grinders, all the polishers, these massive machines that he's used since he moved in there, and eventually he closed the door for the day, but he spent a lot of time doing exactly that, just kind of what you see in the picture. He's staring out the window, and you see a few items left on his shelves. There's not a whole lot left. I don't know how the mirror cracked. I didn't ask him, but that's he's hanging it up. He's been at it for a very long time, and so that was Giovanni. And again, it's one of those pictures. I had a lot of comments about this story in terms of people really connected with this story and they really enjoyed it. And
it's kind of an Americana
tint
to it.
Yeah, I worked with it with Joe Holloman, and the success of the visual part of the story is kind of like Coach Berube. He just let me hang out. It wasn't like, okay, don't you have enough photos? I got something else to do. He just let me hang out, and that's the magic, I think, of what photojournalists can do. Just the magic of time, just being able to be in a spot for more than 30 minutes.
Did you just happen to be here?
Robert, what are generally the conversations when you
Hold on.
when you do go out on these assignments with print journalists? What are you guys generally talking about? What are the things how do you get on the same page, I guess, when you go cover a story like that?
Yeah. A lot of times we're working in advance. We're talking in the office a little bit about what we're going to do out there, and if it's breaking news, if it's spot news, and we all kind of arrive on the scene, then not so much. But for stories that we can plan out a little bit, we're talking beforehand, and then when we're actually at the assignment, I'm kind of aware when the print journalist is trying to dive in with get some good deep quotes, and when he sees me trying to get a picture, he or she they'll back out of the situation also, and so we kind of go back and forth, but more often than not we're actually working separately. He or she will be there at some time, and then I'll call the story subject and try to figure out the best time for me to be there, and
Gotcha.
go separately. We work more separately than anything else.
Yeah, another photo here. Did you just happen to be on the spot for this one?
Yeah, this was a gamble. I like gambles because you just. So I'm on the night shift. I think this one's 2 or 3 years ago, and this is the. I think they call it the Burning Love Festival on Valentine's Day on Art Hill, or something close to that. So it's on Valentine's. It's in the evening. It's a big deal. And that particular night, it got canceled because of snow and ice, and people couldn't get there, and so it got canceled. But I'm on the night shift anyway, and I just got this feeling, people are going to go to this big Valentine's music festival, and maybe there'll be a proposal. And so I'm hanging out by the.
That's a veteran thought.
Yeah, you just again, I have time. There's nothing else going on that night. The festival got canceled, but I'm like, I'm gonna hang here anyway because I just have a feeling. And I saw 2 proposals that night, and I missed the first one entirely. I'd gone to get a drink of water like an idiot.
How dare you?
I know. But then I caught the second one, and so I was, it was nice.
I need to
Nice
check
to
the
have.
caption on this one. For some reason, I think I know the guy in this photo for some
Ooh,
reason.
cool.
I need to see if his name is Charlie by any chance.
Hmm.
So I'll have to go back and check the caption, because if it is the person I'm thinking of, that person has another backstory on top of that story that I think
He has another wife.
No, no. It's not the 70s
No.
anymore. That doesn't happen.
No.
You can't have separate families now.
Totally misread
People
that. My
find
bad.
out.
My fault.
Facebook will tell on you.
Yes, they will.
That's a thing.
Are weather events a big part of what you do? Because I look at some of the photos we see, with the snow shoveling, the flooding, and then of course recently there was the tornado in Jefferson City.
Yeah, there's a lot of weather in this town.
Yeah.
And not enough of it is good. I mean, really.
Yeah.
What an outstanding photo that is.
Yeah.
That is an outstanding photo.
Yeah, it's just,
What's wrong with that girl's head?
to me, I mean, it just speaks to resilience of kids, and
Great point.
This apartment, the most amazing thing about the tornado that came through Jefferson City was that nobody got killed. The destruction was pretty stark. I covered the Joplin tornado, 161 people dead, and in Jefferson City, 20 people got injured. None of the injuries were serious, and that's the most shocking thing to me that whole time. But these people, they're clearing out their apartment because it's damaged. They can't live there anymore. And for the little girl, I mean, she just wants her toys. And so Grandpa's there helping get the toys out. Mom's there helping get the toys out. And she's kind of oblivious to everything around her. And so that's what attracts me to the photo.
This is my first time seeing this photo. This is an amazing photo, Robert. Outstanding.
Thanks. It's, it was, little gift every so often, and again, it's more about just having time to hang out in places and just look beyond the obvious. And so,
Do you know as soon as you click that button, you're like, ooh, winner? Or is it more you get back and you're like, I thought there was something there?
I think things like that, in terms of the unique level of that, I think I kind of, when I see the toys going into the pickup truck, I'm like, okay, this is different, and so yeah, I think sometimes you kind of know that it's at least different.
Did you know when you took this one?
Yeah.
Back to the iconic Ferguson photo.
Yeah. So it's a really long backstory on that photo, but in terms of when I shot the photo, I missed deadline, but that was just life.
Yeah.
But when I shot the photo, the whole thing was about, this is the third night of protest, and it appeared to be the first night where it was going to end peacefully, that there wasn't going to be tear gas. And things changed very, very late when a group of people moved from one place to another place, and the police decided they were going to clear them out. And so all I saw was the volley of tear gas hit the ground, and some guy pick it up and throw it back. And right after that happens, I'm just kind of heading to my car to transmit that picture, because in my brain, the story of the night has changed. It's not a peaceful ending,
Right.
which is what we were writing about, or what it looked like we were writing about. It was another violent end. So when I shot the picture, I didn't see Ed's shirt. I didn't see his dreadlocks. I didn't see his bag of chips. I didn't see any of that. It wasn't until I actually saw it on the screen when I was editing, it's like, okay, this is different. And kind of like, kind of like the ball with the kid. This is different. I haven't seen this before. And really the only reason I'm shooting it to begin with is because it's action happening right in front of me.
Right.
But again, I didn't see any of the little nuances there.
So these are like gifts.
Yeah, they are kind of like gifts.
I mean,
yeah.
really, for what you do. And
Yeah.
then on top of that, so you have the most iconic, noticeable thing ever in the American flag, but then also, as people, we're super attracted to fireworks or fire-looking things. So in this photo that you snag, you have all these intricacies around this giant, crazy event that's happening that you're a part of. So
Yeah. Yeah.
wow.
It was
I remember when
a
that
crazy
photo. I
night.
remember when that photo hit Twitter.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
the reaction, like it was such a. It was. I remember all happening in real time, and
Same.
it was the closest I think you can get to social media being speechless, because it was such a photo in the moment, and because the conversation was already going on. We again, as I pointed out, that was the third day of testing, so everything was at a fever pitch, and on social media, the conversation was just all over the place, and then that photo gets dropped, and it's just the reverb. I had never seen anything like it, especially in regards to social media, and it just hit so many people at the same time, and it was. I know, Robert, you've heard everything in regards to every type of compliment in regards to that photo, but I truly believe it will go down as one of the most seminal photos 50 years. It was just in that moment, especially for social media, it was the first time where I felt like the conversation became speechless, and that photo encapsulated the moment better than anything I have ever seen. So I think you're going to be, I think kids are going to talk about your work for years to come, because in that moment, you captured something that even for the new medium that was social media, that hadn't been seen before.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, for me, it was you know, it was a nice gift. It was an important photo. It was something I hadn't seen, and you know, I sent it to the paper. My director of photography at the time picked it up and immediately tweeted it. I tweeted it about 20 minutes later, and quite honestly, I mean, I was happy to have shot the photo, but I was also really tired, like all of our staff was. And I went home and I went to bed about 2 in the morning, and which was kind of normal. And it's funny, those of us on staff that have families and kids, the way the Ferguson coverage went, those of us who were working at nights and out on the streets at night, if you didn't see your kids in the morning, you didn't see them at all, because, you know, wake up, get them to school, or at least have breakfast with them real quick, and by the time they're home from school, you're gone. And so the only time to really see kids was in the morning, and so I remember, you know, just doing that routine, even though, I mean, Ferguson was only 4 days old at that point, kind of had a routine. And they went off to school, and finally the house was quiet, and for the first time I opened up and had a look at Twitter, and I just couldn't believe it. And not only were the comments there, just, you know, thousands and thousands of new followers and the comments, but what really struck me, and you know, sadly Skeeta's not with us anymore, but he would tell the same story. What struck both of us was that people needed to replicate that picture. People needed to draw it, paint it, get a tattoo.
T-shirts pretty quick, wasn't it?
It was in T-shirts. I was at the Mike Brown Memorial. Within 36 hours later, I was at the Mike Brown Memorial, just being there, and somebody walked by with a T-shirt. It's the first time I'd seen it, and
Like it was nothing.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And within a day or so, people were selling them. Right, they had all different kind of T-shirts, and they were selling them on West Florissant Avenue. It was just commerce, but it was just amazing to me how many people needed, whether they're trying to make money off of it or whatever. Most of the people they needed to paint it. They needed to paint it, and they needed to send it to Skeeta or send it to me. They needed to get a tattoo. They needed to do something with it. It was on the side of a building in Cambridge, Massachusetts, within just like a couple weeks.
It was in Travis. You said the Twitter part of it. I was watching that live as I'm sitting downtown. I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But the people noticing the Red Hot Riplets bag, that I think that sparked so much more interest in St. Louis. And then I hope I'm not speaking.
It localizes the
Oh
story.
my gosh! And then I hope we can all laugh about this. I think it adds to it of the realness of, like, people do things differently. His Twitter handle was the most hilarious thing you could have possibly thought of.
Yeah.
And I don't it was something around stuff being wet.
Yeah.
But it was that added to the entire moment. I felt like those are two things I'll never forget as being part of this and watching it literally like explode on Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, in a short time too, to me, it's amazing how a photo like that can become haunting too, because we talk about, and Travis, you mentioned it, getting that in the moment. Robert, you're talking about shooting breaking news, getting it in the moment, but in a short time. We're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of the Ferguson unrest. But in a short time, the gentleman in that photo, Edward Crawford, is no longer with us. A guy who was caught in a moment like that, a young man, is no longer with us. So how does that photo, does it mean something different to you now than it did several years ago, I guess, Robert? It's just because we know more about what happened with Edward. Would you, Skeet, is that what his nickname was?
Skeeta was his nickname. And, it's funny, the show's coming up at the History Museum. And had he been here, he would have loved seeing his picture up on the wall. He for better or for worse, he became an instant celebrity over this. And I think he had a hard time with that.
Did you get to know him?
I got to know him a little bit. I
Right.
wouldn't say we were really close. We had lunch together every so often, and
Wow.
and we
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we talk every so often. Most we just text and back and forth. But he was a really good guy. And but I also think when he got thrust into this, just because of the photo, he was considered by the public to be like a frontline protester leader, and he wasn't.
Right.
That. He wasn't that at all. He was out like at his first or second protest, and he mostly watched from the sidelines. He didn't do a whole lot of frontline chanting or leading the crowd. You never saw him with a bullhorn or anything like that. And so I think when everybody wanted his opinion right off the bat about what happens with the movement and the leadership, and that just wasn't him.
Right.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't
That's
expect people
interesting.
to always have to be that either. That's a huge thing.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
that-
mean, like the photo there. That's thrown his direction. I want to get rid of it. Hey, that's what I was trying to do.
Right.
Yeah, and that's
Right.
that's all he did. That's
then-
all he did.
as someone that does what you do, and again, I'm not trying to overhype this, but you have a Pulitzer now, like the Post-Dispatch, or all that. These are huge deals, as we talked about before the show. That's as big of a deal for a journalist in the United States possible. It's got to be, I don't know, humbling. I can't even find the right words to have a photo, more or less in today's modern world, immortalized, but the subject is mortal, right? Like that has to be something that you deal with internally, or maybe you've just kind of like, that's part of the game. That has to be something it's unique to your field.
Yeah. I mean, this one obviously weighs on me like it would anybody.
Yeah.
Sure.
But, I was shocked when I heard in May of 2017, and when people talk about it now, I'm still kind of shocked. But I knew him a little bit.
Right.
I don't think I knew him enough.
Makes
so,
sense.
yeah.
With the exhibit coming to the Missouri History Museum, we've shown a few photos that will end up there. What is it? You've gotten a bit of a sneak peek to the
Yeah.
Pulitzer Prize photo exhibit that's coming Saturday. That
Right.
opens Saturday. What should we keep our eyes out for?
Yeah, this is going to be awesome, St. Louis. I've been to the museum. I've seen the Pulitzer Prize gallery at the museum. The museum is a big place. It's like 6 stories tall, and artifacts from all different things in the news business. But the Pulitzer Photo Gallery is the place to be in the museum. I've been there at night when they're closing and they're trying to get 50 or 60 people out of the gallery, and so it's the place to be. And so this traveling exhibit is done really well, and it's done very much the same way it's presented at the museum. You have 80 photographs on the walls, and then you can go to these electronic kiosks. And for instance, the easiest example is the Ferguson example. We have one photograph on the wall from the Pulitzer, but then you can go to these kiosks and you can see all the other photos that were part of that prize. Because some, in the Pulitzer Prizes, some of the winners are single pictures, some of them are like multiple story images.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so there's lots of depth there. So you can go to these kiosks and you can see the other images that were on a particular year, and in some cases you can actually watch a film by one of the a film of one of the photographers, just kind of talking about what it was like. So on top of just the Pulitzer photo exhibit, this is the first stop in the traveling exhibit that a museum has wanted to do a local photojournalism second gallery. And so St. Louis Post-Dispatch photographs, I believe there's 79 of those, are going to be are displayed there also, which is going to be, pretty cool to see. It's a lot of St. Louis history. It's a lot of things you haven't seen before. A lot of high moments. There's different categories it's broken down into. Some of the pictures you'll be very familiar with, and a lot of them you've never seen before, guaranteed. So
That sounds awesome.
It's something to see.
I'm gonna try and get there this weekend. Have you ever had the privilege of, I don't know, snapping a photo too of the River to Pear underneath Forest
All right,
Park in the
Gardner.
tunnels
Oh,
down?
boy.
I have a bit of a River to Pear
Get
fetish,
out of my life.
and I'm trying to get into the tunnels under Forest Park, and I'm making some headway there. But I was just wondering if, by chance, you have been one of the few people that have gone down there to shoot
I'm
down
gonna
there.
take a picture of a producer
Jesus,
that used to have a job.
I can't say that I've done that.
Okay.
I did do the River to Pear flooding down by Lime, if that helps.
Yeah.
This is the equivalent of me saying, like, you ever take pictures of, like, any hot chicks around town?
You ever get an alien? You ever got an alien?
Okay, here's something. 2 questions. I don't.
You ever take a picture of a ghost accidentally?
Yeah. That's a kind of a thing. And also, just I wanted to share this with you in the
Now
comments.
let's get all our ridiculous ones out.
Let's get it. He's been wondering. He's like, when's the Bigfoot question coming,
right.
you turds? Obviously. Just a few comments from Rusty in the comments. Fantastic. Maybe my favorite segment I've ever watched on the show. So kudos to you.
Dang.
Yeah, that beats out like Lou Ferrigno, Sinbad. There's some interesting people who've been on here.
Lou
the
Ferrig-
Hulk.
The Hulk.
Lou Ferrigno telling me not to ride an electric scooter.
He did, and then you wrecked days later. So
Nice.
listen to the Hulk, everybody.
Nice.
A couple things. Do you ever, when you're photographing this, so there's, it's not just St. Louis, but St. Louis, you're going to adapt to your geography, right? So everywhere now that there's Instagram, there will be attractive to semi-attractive girls getting tricked into going to take pictures with a guy who just bought a camera, who's a photographer, who's going to do that. Do you ever run into that while in these abandoned buildings? Like kind of an awkward setup. It's like, I don't know if I need to be here. That and then Urbex Explorers. There are people that literally go through tours of these old buildings. And I was curious as well, if they're not people that are living there, if you're there on assignment and you just see some people just exploring, if you're ever just kind of, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I've seen that actually while we were working on this story. I saw some explorers checking out an old church off of Jefferson.
I think they're people that just like to get high away from their family or something, right?
Some of that's true.
Nailed
But there's also like there's like a lot of urban photographers out there, just like to document the urban decay.
Which is cool too.
It is interesting. I think
Yeah.
it's really interesting. But no, I mean, that's like, during that part of the story, I mean, we're looking for
Specifics.
We heard there's, we get a tip from somebody like with Larry Rice's group, and they give us a tip. I help this person who's sometimes in this house, and we're just kind of going back. I mean, there was a guy I was looking for in a different church. I went, and it was not a safe place to be. But I went in that place like 30 times because I could not find this guy. And this is over like a month. I'm looking for this
And
guy.
you never found him.
Never found him, but I found a second guy.
Okay.
So
Good work.
Do you let people know that you're going to be there if it's something like that?
yeah, if I'm going into somewhere stupid like that, I'll call the office or I'll text my boss and say, hey, I'm going into this address right now.
Okay.
You'll hear from me in 10 minutes. If you don't,
Gotcha.
yeah.
I was wondering how that works.
Gotcha.
Because I'd like some help if I needed it.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
have you ever requested an accompaniment? I mean, would you do that, security or something?
No.
I guess if you're not poking the bear, so to say, you're not going to necessarily be a target in 95% of situations.
we saw some security folks with some of the national media in Ferguson.
Did you look down on that? Like posers?
I didn't feel it was necessary. I think if you get out, no matter what the story is, you get out and you talk to people, and they understand where you're coming from, then you're going to be okay. I mean, one of our photographers, David Carson, in the very early days, it was like the second day, I believe, people saw him with a camera and they went after him and they got him. and he swung his cameras to try to get out. He got he got roughed up a little bit, and his jeans all tore up, and the guy who came to his aid to stop these guys.
Was this on video?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Or if it is, I've never seen it. But the guy who came to his aid was a pastor that he had met earlier in the day. And this pastor comes running up. Yeah, exactly. This pastor comes running up. No. This guy's local post-dispatch. He's trying to cover our story. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the legwork. You get out and you talk to people, and they get to know you. You get to know them. And, now I can see some, some of the national people, some of the, especially some of the network people. I mean, yes, we're carrying valuable equipment. They're carrying even more valuable equipment.
Sure.
And so maybe from that end a little bit, I could see it, but I just didn't see much of a need.
Did you know the layout of Ferguson?
Yeah,
that's one thing that gets to me, and I know it gets to Travis too. Travis, is from that area.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
And it's that it's sold, especially when it's sold a certain way, that this is what Ferguson is, and I won't get political with it, but lots of people have sold it a certain way. Go drive through Ferguson. Oh. Go look at the houses. Like, you see those houses, you drop them in Webster and Kirkwood, you're paying a pretty penny.
Yep.
Go just drive through there.
Have lunch at the brewery.
Yes. Just, you have no idea what you're talking about when you deliver it a certain way.
Right.
So I was wondering if you were familiar with that layout before.
Truly on
absolutely.
The ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've done countless stories in Ferguson. My first story ever in Ferguson was in 2010. I did a story about a first-time political candidate. She was just running for office. She'd never done it before, and we just followed her through her attempt to lend a council seat, and going door to door, knocking, and the long days of that. But just I got to know the town a lot because I just followed her so much.
Right.
And so that that was one story, but we were up there for several stories. Even the simple, the farmers market up there used to be such a big deal. It's a little bit smaller now, but it used to be such a big deal. And so we'd go to that just for feature stories, or we were there a lot.
Yeah.
So when something like this happens, it's still our community. It's just a little more difficult to cover.
Right.
Certainly is. Travis, you're in New York. You've got last question, and we'll get Robert out of here and close up.
Oh, wow. I get the last question for Robert. Oh.
Well, yeah, I know far be it from you to think that you should get to go last, but I'll toss you this one. We'll act like you care about stuff like that.
I have, in my own right, have recently become a celebrity.
Dear God, cut his stream. Cut his stream.
Robert, what advice you could give to
Block
me
him on Twitter, Robert,
as I continue to grow? Again, I don't have a Pulitzer yet. I think I'll get around to it at some point here. Us millennials. But I'm just curious, does he have any advice for handling newfound celebrity?
No. I mean,
here's how you deal with this. You go, I just don't see it in your future. now maybe another person, maybe the gentleman to my left, that's me. You could say that. Also, I need you to tell Travis where I won't get too specific, but where a kid of yours would maybe be going to college. Are you willing to talk about that? Would you say
sure.
Where somebody's enrolling for fall?
Yeah, this may not go over really well, but yeah, my son's going to KU in the fall.
Oh God,
yeah.
Travis, are you still so trusting? Are you still so trusting?
I don't want to speak to him anymore. We can go.
Rock Chalk Jayhawk.
Oh no!
The good thing about not being from St. Louis is I have no allegiance to the Mizzou thing or the KU thing. Mm-hmm. For
That's
me,
fair.
It's just another campus.
So I
don't
sure
care.
It's delightful.
Look, Robert, if you want
If you
to
have
now, you
horrible
could
taste.
probably head up to Lawrence and photograph the cathedral of college basketball that is Fall Gallon Fieldhouse.
Okay.
I am
So-
interested in
Here we
seeing
go.
that.
Yeah, and then maybe the FBI will be there investigating something.
I'll take care of
you
itself.
Can get that. Yeah. You want to stick them on?
I've been
Yeah.
there once.
Okay.
It's religious. It's religious.
But my real final question though is:
Yeah. Will
you follow me on Twitter?
Is there an event or a person you would love to photograph?
Wow. No.
Wow.
I it's funny. I don't know what's going to happen. Well, tomorrow I don't know what's going to happen, but because I'm off today, I'm working tomorrow, and man, it's simple. I just like meeting people,
No.
and it doesn't have
Nice.
to be anything
And
special.
We
And
should
I'll
all
say
take note
this.
from Robert.
Interesting.
That sounds like
This
a
was-
great answer. God. We'd all be like,
Well,
well, I
that's-
mean, do I get to eat dinner with Larry David after I take a picture of him? Like this, like that's the answer that us idiots would say. Or if you go to like 5 to 14-year-old me, I'm like, well, Michael Jordan and I seem like we would get along really well, so I'd take some pictures. No, that was a great answer.
No, I think you've reiterated something that someone, a former colleague of yours, had told me in the past, and that's the late great Joe Strauss. Like I would say, hey, what are you writing about? If we were going in the Cardinals clubhouse, he'd be like, I don't know, I haven't talked to the people yet. So you don't get to decide what the story. The story kind of develops.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily every time. Sometimes you do have, hey, this happened. We need to ask about this.
Right.
But there are other times, a lot of times, where that kind of comes to you, and that's what I continuously hear. Like I would hear from Joe and others, and I hear from you. Just even though it's not print per se, it's the pictures of it. That's something consistent. So I think that grabs me still and kind of reinforces what Joe had told me in the past when he had his tape recorder, and the TV guys would ask a question and he would turn off the tape recorder and then turn it back on when someone else asked.
Oh, he was the best.
And he would make it noticeable that he would unclick it and then click
That's
again.
hilarious.
Oh, it was.
That's
You think you could take
hilarious.
petty to a new level, Travis? That
Oh,
was the best.
That's pretty epic. I
It
didn't
just
realize that story.
reinfor-
Got
yeah.
That's pretty funny.
That
It just
certainly
kind of
is.
reinforces what he had told me in the past.
Again, Robert, he does work for the Post-Dispatch. Go see the Missouri History Museum display this weekend. Any more photos we need to see before we get out of here,
I
Gardner?
think we're good right
We
now.
are.
We
We're
got
good.
a lot up there, yeah.
Twitter
Also-
handle, we'll tweet out all your information. too.
Yeah. So also before we cut off, on Saturday when the show opens, I believe it's at 2:00. There's going to be a panel discussion of. Hopefully, we're going to have most of our staff there. So it's a Post-Dispatch photographer panel.
Wow.
So check that out for.
That's at 2:00.
I think it's 2 to 3. Yeah.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah. So check that
Oh,
out.
that's awesome.
And that's ask anybody anything. So we're going to have another
Oh, that's
panel.
pretty cool.
We'll have another panel on the 21st, which is going to be strictly Ferguson related. But
Okay.
but the one on Saturday is going to be just about what we do.
Well, gosh, come back anytime. Absolute pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks for having
Travis,
me.
we're going to get off of here. I have to awkwardly proposition Robert for some free headshots before he leaves, so this is going to maybe take a turn for the worse.
I brought my
in the
iPhone.
relationship. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Nice.
Gardner, quick thanks to the sponsors. I'll say thanks to Getaway Carts, customized golf carts right here in St. Louis. You want to scoot around Soulard, St. Louis Hills, any of the neighborhoods in the greater St. Louis area, you hit up Getaway Carts. GetawayCarts.com is the website. Hashtag customized without limits. And make sure you let them know we are live. Sent you. Gardner, you look poised. What do you have?
Continue with your sponsors.
Oh, please.
I'll
yeah.
have something for the very end real quick.
I love it. Buzz's Hawaiian Grill. You can see their food truck all throughout St. Louis. Fresh food for you and yours. Locally owned. Great Hawaiian food in the St. Louis area. Obviously, thanks to Tech Electronics for helping us build out our studio. Our friends at Pet One St. Louis West, as well as Hillside Animal Hospital. You can see Dr. Ed in here tomorrow. We're going to have a special guest playing Dogs on Film with him, and to all of our other wonderful sponsors. Huge thanks to everybody for supporting. And if you enjoyed this with Robert, follow him on Twitter, as well as share this. Tell people about this conversation. It's very enlightening, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in here.
One final thing. It's not my photo, but it was a photo taken of one of Robert Cohen's colleagues when he was younger. I just wanted to get his thoughts on this particular picture
Oh, dear
of Ben
God.
Fredrickson.
Oh, no.
Ooh.
Oh, no. What'd he do to those cats?
Oh, that's really
Are they
disturbing.
still here?
Okay,
Are they still
disturbing.
here? Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
Now I
picture.
am.
Yeah, and so next time you see Ben Fred,
I'll look at him in a whole different way.
yeah, and ask him about it.
Yeah.
And that way I can get a text from him asking me, "What the hell are you doing, man?"
Nice. I like that. I like that.
For Travis in New York, for Gardner, for the great Robert Cohen from right here in St. Louis. Chris, it's We Are Live. We're back live tomorrow at 8 a.m. We'll see you then.
Peace and love, everyone.